500只是个数字而已。
小人物上篮，
雷霆总冠军，
这根本就是廖俊了啊！
每月赞助210，我们没有要改。KTV 公牛社，
我们节目的公信力就不在第一个顺位上面。
那我们看看这个球员的数据。
打球不只是打球。各位乡亲喜多听众朋友大家好，欢迎收听小人物上篮今天是非常特别的日子我常常说非常特别，但是今天是非常特别因为很快的我要把这个语言转成英文了，这是因为我们终于又有一个英文，每年都会有一个英文的录音节目，那大部分的你们其实认识他等一下你就会发现他是谁。那基本上他是一个来过台湾，然后在拯救了台湾一个球队，把台湾的一个球队带到高峰，然后今年来到了加拿大，然后在加拿大这支球队成为了年度教练。那因为他是加拿大人，然后也差点赢了总冠军，然后今年又有巴黎奥运加拿大队，所以我们有很多事情可以谈so 我要转成英文了Well, welcome to Little Guy Layup. Today is a very special episode. We have the honor to invite a very special guest. And this guest, a lot of you guys, basketball minds in Taiwan, actually know him already. He's responsible for taking the Formosa Dreamers from a sub-500 team to the franchise best at 19-11 and introducing the hammer emoji to the world of basketball. If you follow his Instagram, there's just hammers left and right. More recently, he's actually named the Coach of the Year by the Canadian Elite Basketball League that we just talked about a few weeks ago. And while leading the Vancouver Bandits to the best record in the league, he did it again. And just 2 points shy from winning the basketball championship, the whole thing. And since he's a Canadian basketball figure, we will ask him and talk to him about the Canadian basketball performance with the Olympics. Without further ado, let's welcome our very special guest. And as you may know him as Zhu Jiaolian, Coach Kyle Julius.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Coach. Thank you so much for being with us. How are you feeling at the moment?
I'm pretty down, to be honest. It's about 10 days, I guess, now since we lost the championship game. Yeah, it's tough. I've been in the finals before. I've been in some championship games before, and I've won some and I've lost some. But this one was really difficult because we had an amazing season and we were expected to win. We had a great team, a great group of guys that I really loved and care about. And it's hard to explain, but we just did not play well in the finals, and we lost by 2 points. And it's just you don't feel great about it. Half of me is really happy about the season we had, and the other part of me is really down about losing in the championship game. But as a coach, you learn a lot, and so there's a lot of things that I've learned from this particular experience that I can use to improve for sure.
I mean, I don't know I cannot judge, but I mean, you guys were down double digits in the fourth quarter and came back just by 2 points short. I mean,
we got right all the way back to basically next basket wins. And we had a really bad possession on defense. We were playing better offense than defense at the very end. And I was just praying that we were going to get one stop. And we didn't. But it happens.
Well, you got multiple stops before that one stop. That
exactly. You're right, Hans. We needed one more for sure, and we just couldn't get it. So, exciting game for sure. Our fan base and our organization was really proud of the season, but I need another championship. So I was a little bit down after that for sure.
Well, today with us there are two other little guys. Fu is based in Surrey, and he watched one of your games, and we'll have lots of questions regarding the Bandits for you. Great. And of course, Kong is a huge Taiwan basketball fan from Hong Kong, and he's also with us today. Awesome. So, Kong, why don't you kick us off with some questions?
Yeah, so I know that is the first year of being a GM of the Bandits, right? So in the past years, like just being a head coach. So what's the difference or the opportunities of becoming a GM and also a coach?
Actually, Kong, it's the fourth year that I've been the GM. Yeah, so that's okay. So no, I've been the general manager. I was even the general manager while I was coaching the Dreamers in Taiwan. A lot of people don't know that. So I built the team. I was the head coach in 2020, and we went to the finals and we lost in that championship game. But that was a different experience because we were actually the underdogs. And then I've been the general manager ever since. And we've had good teams in the league. We've always made it to the playoffs. We've always made it to the Final Four, actually. And so that's always been exciting. But yeah, the difference between being a head coach and a general manager, it's tough. For example, when I was in Taiwan, our general manager would pick the team in general. We would work together, but he would pick the team, and, you show up as a coach and you have to kind of coach the team that is picked. And then so you have to totally adjust your style, totally adjust a lot of things to the group because, you don't, like I said, you don't get to choose all the players. When you're the general manager, it's an interesting situation. So you pick your team and you build your team, around your style, right? And the culture that you would like to have. So I definitely think it helps to be able to pick the team. But the one interesting thing is there's no excuses. I'm responsible for everything. If something goes wrong with the player, that was my choice, and at the same time I have to coach them. So, Kong, it takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. You always start with a vision. You always start with, the way you want your team to play, the way you want your team to act. For me, I'm very specific. I have a certain culture. We talk about the hammer and fighting and being aggressive and never giving up and being relentless and being tough and being together. So I always build my team with those core values in mind. And then systematically, I love, shooting the three. I love playing with space. I like having a good center. Nowadays, a lot of teams don't put a lot of value into having a good 5-man. I do put a lot of value into it, especially after my experience in Taiwan. So, yeah, as a general manager, you get to build the team based on the way you want the team to play. As a head coach, sometimes you have no choice. But this case with the Bandits, I get to do both. So very interesting experience for me. One experience that I'm very grateful for sure.
Yeah, but you have mentioned about you like your player playing with like heart and soul and something.
Yeah.
So, but I gotta say like CEBL is kind of like, I think like for some players is like summer league, because after they playing CEBL, they gotta find another professional team and play for the whole season.
Correct.
So, I don't know, they maybe for them it's like a summer job or something. So how do you implement those kind of like work ethics into the players? So especially this is a summer league for them.
Kong, amazing question. Very smart question because it's true. It's a very challenging situation. So most of my team, when they arrive, to the CEBL, they just finished like 8, 9, 10 months, in Europe, in some cases, Asia, and they're tired, and they've been playing very high levels, and they've been playing hard, and some of them have small injuries and, fatigue. So yes, I think I do have to adjust for that, Kong. I can't be all the way like I would in a normal season. So to be perfectly honest, we don't practice as hard, a lot more mental than physical. We spend here at the Bandits, we spend a lot of money and time and energy on our physiotherapy, our athletic therapy, our strength and conditioning, and then all of the resources around for their bodies. We feed them. We actually spend a lot of money on high-level nutrition, supplements. We make sure they're doing yoga. We do a lot of little things, Kong, to make sure that we're taking care of their bodies first. And at the same time, so they're coming from a difficult season. And like you said, we know that they're going to be leaving to go to another difficult season. So we really want to make sure that, it's tough. It is a summer situation. It's still very high level. Like the play is incredibly high level. The talent is incredibly high. So I think, we try not to overextend, over practice, over pressure. We try to make sure they have a lot of fun. We do a lot of team activities. If you look at our social media, we do a ton of team activities, and I think that's really important. So I try to sell, when I'm recruiting the players, like a bit of both: basketball experience, a fun life experience, and then we try to blend them together. So I'm definitely not the same coach that I would be in an 8 or 9 month season, which is also an interesting experience because I get to, try a different side of my personality as well and maybe relax a little bit more. And then when it comes to a day before the game, or we try to treat the games very, very seriously. We try to prepare aggressively for the games. But it's a very smart question. And so to answer the question specifically, we really try not to over practice them for sure.
Yeah. It's so weird to hear from you, especially
I
we know
know.
your characteristic in
I
Taiwan.
know. Everybody says the same thing, but I work very closely, for example, with our athletic therapy and strength and conditioning. Every single morning we have a meeting and we talk about all the players, and they will tell me, what they think we should do during that day, how hard we should go or how long. So we have a very collaborative coaching staff, and I would say we do a lot more individual skill work here in the summertime, just so that we can help them with their games and make sure they stay sharp, but not overdo it too much in practice. It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. Great question.
So then with the college kids, because I know there are sports U that U Sports development players. Do they then help with the situation because they don't come from the same situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Another great question. Yeah, so we can work them harder, and then we can also use them as practice players. So it's very cool what the CEBL does is every team has to take 2 or 3 Canadian university players as development players, and you have to put them on your roster. And it makes it really exciting for the league. It makes it really exciting for the growth and development of basketball in Canada. A very, very cool situation. So yeah, that we use our development players here with the Bandits. Some teams don't use them as much, but we definitely use them, and they help. And then we've noticed too that now they go back to their university team and they play at like a very high level. So it's a very good kind of like reciprocal relationship and development model.
Yeah, I did notice when I was watching the games when the university kids, when they checked in, people gave them like huge applause. And,
it's very cool. Very cool situation. And most of the university players on each CEBL team are like local. We try to take the local guys. So then, like you said, they get a big round of applause, and it's very cool. Yeah,
you gotta have some local heroes for people to cheer on.
Yeah, it's if you think about it, what they do is they really help grow the game, Hans. So they'll improve with us, and then they'll go back to their communities and play at a high level, and then those guys around them will learn what our U Sports players learned, and it's a great way to grow the game. I'm really proud that the CEBL does that. For example, when I played Canadian University, nothing like this existed. It would have been very cool. So I'm proud to be able to grow the game that way in Canada. I think it's awesome.
I wish something like this was there when we were in high school or college. So then we have something to dream about, because there was the NBA, but come on, there's only one Steve Nash.
Sure. You're right. Not everyone's Steve Nash. No, for sure. So yeah, we are really, we are really expediting the growth of the game in Canada for sure. Just with this alone, I mean, you're getting a guy now. If you take Diego Mafia from Victoria, right, Hans, who played for us now for 2 summers. He still has another year of school, and in theory, he's played 2 years professionally now, 2 full seasons professionally, right? So the development he's getting is incredible, right? And the exposure, right?
And then it feeds back to his team and his teammates.
Exactly.
How that affects the people. And then that inspires the local kids who watch him. And it's like, I can be like him in the future.
And I think it improves the coaches, the coaching come to our practice. The coaches come and they talk to us and we meet with them. And so, I think it's a really cool situation. And it's happening all across Canada now, right, with our league. So.
Yeah, this is something great. Something we will talk about very soon about how Canadian basketball has grown. Basketball in Canada has grown over the last, let's say, decade or so.
Yeah.
But before that, another thing I've noticed about CEBL is the Elam ending.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why you were able to come back from double digits without fouling, because nobody wants to see another foul.
Exactly.
To stop the clock.
Yeah.
But another thing, super cool, and brought back so much memory was the Terry Fox game.
Yeah,
so can you talk about the Terry Fox game to
for all the
listeners out here?
Yeah, for all the Canadian listeners and all the the listeners in Asia, Terry Fox, to me, Hans, he's probably the greatest Canadian. When he was 21 years old, he had his leg amputated because it was, he had developed cancer in his leg, And then, he was a Canadian basketball player. He was a university basketball player from BC here. So it's connected to, the growth of the game. And his coach at the time, his teammate at the time is a legendary now Canadian coach, Jay Triano. Jay Triano was a mentor of mine and somebody that I really looked up to. So I felt very connected to the Terry Fox story. And when I was a kid, he actually stopped his run in my hometown of Thunder Bay. So yeah, we were always raised on Terry Fox and what he did for cancer research. And so Terry Fox was a 22-year-old kid who decided to run across Canada. He started on the east coast of Canada, and he basically ran a marathon every single day on one leg. And he inspired the country. His toughness, his desire to raise money for Canada, and his selfless act was, it inspired a nation. He's one of the greatest Canadians ever. And I think to date, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's raised over $800 million for cancer research, if not more. And he's a huge part of the schooling system in Canada. You grow up in Canada. It's a fundamental part. All the kids learn about Terry Fox. So as a Bandits, general manager and head coach, we got to honor him one game this year. And we had special jerseys, commemorative jerseys with the name of every city that he ran through, on the back of our jerseys. We raised a fair amount of money. It was a nationally televised game, and we also played amazing and we won. So that was a great day. But just to be a part of that game, we'll forever do it now as a Bandits organization. But it was a very cool situation, very cool opportunity. And then we got to educate our American players, our international players. We got to educate them about Terry Fox. So yeah, very, very cool game. And the highlights are on YouTube and on our social media. Yeah, that was an honor for me for sure.
Well, Coach, I can share some good news with you. We did in high school the Terry Fox run every first weekend of school or whatever.
Yeah,
it was dreadful, obviously.
Sure.
But I guess for a high school kid who doesn't like to run, it was dreadful. But it definitely left something very important in me. Yep. And I could tell you one thing that you'll be very proud. When I went to medical school in Taiwan, it was the Kaohsiung Medical University.
Okay.
And during that time, they started the Terry Fox run every.
Are you serious?
First weekend of school. Yes, and
to
bring awareness to cancer and to raise funds for cancer research.
Oh, I wasn't aware. That's amazing.
That is not limited to Canada.
That touches my heart because I love Taiwanese people, and to know that's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was a great time. And so when I saw that you guys still remember, I mean, of course, every Canadian would still remember, but actually took action to commemorate Terry Fox. It meant so much to me. I mean, every time I go back to Vancouver Island, I still go to Victoria and see that statue right there at mile 0.
It's so cool. So cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's bring back to your coaching philosophy a little bit. How is that? So before, I mean, I don't know if you know, but we dubbed you as the Tips, the Tom Thibodeau of Canadian basketball.
I've heard that about my time in Taiwan. I've had a lot of nicknames, and I've had I've heard all kinds of different things for sure.
Yeah. So can you share a bit about your coaching philosophy? That as one, and two, you did earlier mention that the experience in Taiwan changed your perspective of basketball. So can you talk about that a bit more?
Yeah. So my coaching philosophy when I first started coaching guys, I wanted to be the type of coach that I would have loved to have played for, and I think that's a good thing, and I think it's a bad thing because I was also the type of player, guys, that I came to every practice an hour early and I worked as hard as I could. And then I stayed after every practice and I worked as hard as I could. And on the day offs, I went in and I worked some more. I loved the game with all my heart as a player, and I worked really hard. And so when I got into coaching, I kind of expected everybody to be like that, all players to be like that. And I think we know, they're not. Right. And so my coaching philosophy is really about building a bond with the players through our common goals and through our work. And so I'm a worker. And I think that, there's two types of pain that you experience during a season. Okay. So there's the pain that you experience from putting the work in and preparing, right? So there's the pain of the preparation. And then there's the pain that you experience, when maybe you didn't prepare and it doesn't go well. So I always tell our guys, and my philosophy is built on, you got to choose which pain you want. Do you want the pain up front in the preparation, or do you want the pain after, if you didn't prepare properly, right? And so I work through my philosophy in that regard, meaning I want to be a tremendously prepared team. And then through our preparation, I want to build bonds with the players, and I want our players to build bonds together. And so through that comes what we call togetherness. And I've been saying it for all the years coaching. Togetherness happens when everybody does their job at a high level, right? Because when you are doing your job at a high level and the player beside you is doing his job at a high level, you get an automatic trust. And through that trust becomes a bond, and togetherness forms, a bond forms. When certain guys aren't doing their jobs at a high level, it's hard to trust that guy, and you'll never totally have togetherness. So before we talk about wins and losing, before we talk about tactics and style of play, I want tough players. I want players that want to do their jobs at a high level, and then I want to build togetherness. So the chemistry, the culture of the team, the energy, the vibes, those are most important to me before everything else. And Taiwan changed me a lot because, I spent 4 years in Taiwan, and Taiwanese players are very different from the players that I grew up with. And they're very different from, the way that I played. And they're very, very different from, for example, the players that I coach now in the CEBL. But they did teach me, the value of understanding people are different, and people come from different cultures and different backgrounds. Right. And through that kind of experience, Hans, I really my philosophy started to become a lot more adaptable, meaning I can't just walk into a dreamer's practice and expect everything to be a certain way. As I said earlier, I didn't really choose most of those players, and so with that being said, I had to start to form my relationships with the players in a different way. And at the same time, they didn't even speak English in most cases, or I didn't speak Chinese. Right. And so, there was a long process of learning how to adapt, learning how to be appreciative of the different cultural backgrounds that different players have. And then through those adaptations, through those appreciations, start to build relationships. But it still always came down to the work with me. I wanted to work with the players. And then I think once you start to put the work in together individually, the time and energy together individually, I think you start to get the trust, the bonds start to form. And then the most important aspect, do your players play with confidence? And I think that takes time to build a team that is full of guys with confidence, right? So we can build it, we can go in this way. We want energy, we want togetherness, we want confidence. I think you mix those three together, you'll have bonds and relationships, you'll have trust, you'll have strength, and then you'll have a good team. So in Taiwan, it took me a while, but I really spent a lot of time and energy trying to build, for example, Achi's confidence. I thought he was a great player. And I told people all the time, I got mad at Achi when he didn't shoot. I got mad at Achi when he didn't play with aggression. I got mad when he didn't play with confidence, because that was the most important thing to me, was building the confidence in Achi. And, it was really cool because his rookie year with us, he had like 4 30-point games, some huge, huge, huge games. And I was so proud of him because it took a lot of, again, he didn't speak English. I didn't speak Chinese. I didn't really understand, his college system or his high school system. I didn't really get it, right? And so we had to learn each other. I had to develop a lot more patience. And I think Achi, for me, is probably one of my proudest players. It makes me the most proud because it took a long time to build his confidence. We built his confidence to a high level. He played at a very high level. And then when I left, the season that I left, he went on to play very well. And I really saw his confidence this past season, and that made me really proud. So, to kind of summarize, I'm all about toughness, togetherness. I'm all about building confidence. I think that comes from the work. And then once you have the work, once guys want to work and they enjoy the work, And then you can start building your style of play and all that kind of stuff. But it takes time. And then Taiwan taught me how to adapt. Taiwan taught me to be a lot more patient. Taiwan taught me to be a lot more calm. You know, like in Taiwan, I didn't have a lot of control. I didn't really pick the teams. I didn't really understand the officiating. I couldn't communicate with the referees. You know, I felt like in Taiwan, Fubon and the Kings, they had a lot of control. They had a lot of power. You know, they had great teams. And so it taught me really how to relax, you know, and focus on my group. And I think it's made me a better coach. And I do believe that my experience in Taiwan is why we had such a good season this year in the CEBL. I really do believe it.
Oh,
wow.
That means so much.
Yeah. And I do think it really helped me. Like a lot of my players in Canada, they're like, Kyle, man, you're so much more calm now. You're different. You're not the same, you know. And I do think it was my experience in Taiwan and what I learned about myself. But most importantly, you know, what I learned about how to build confidence in Taiwanese players. I think that's really helped me, you know, as a coach, you know.
Yeah. It's so fun to hear you saying that like Kings and the football gets a lot of control of that, because like last year we are interviewing with Ryan Machon. He's like, I want to get fined. He don't want to get fined. So, but now you're just free now. So it's fun to hear you saying that. But okay, so let's change a little bit of questions. So
sure.
So since you have been a GM of the Vancouver Bandits, right? So how do you like when you're scouting players? So apart from like skill set or skill level, so how do you like look for their personalities? So because like recently we just like I think we interviewed another Taiwanese coaches. He is like from the Kaohsiung Aquas. I don't know whether you have heard of them. It's from T1 League, but I know their boss required them to make a very long scouting report when they are looking for imports or something. So so since you are so emphasized on players' personalities, about work ethics and stuff, so how do you scout player when you are trying to looking for players? So will you look how do you look for their personalities and also their playing styles?
Yeah, I haven't always been very good with that. It's hard. It's definitely the hardest thing to do because we know that talent wins. We know that talent, you know, impacts winning more than anything. We know that. As much as we want to say character is most important, and it is extremely important. We know that talent truly impacts winning. I mean, you take any championship team, Kong, anywhere in the world, and they will have one or two guys that are super talented that really were the driving force in that season. I've had championship teams. We've had that same factor. I've lost to championship teams that have had that same factor. You know, you go through the NBA, you go through the P League last year. You look at Jeremy Lin, for example.
Yeah.
If Jeremy Lin is not playing for the Kings, they do not win. I mean, they do not win. And if you look at Fubon for 3 years, they had a lot of talent, not just one or two guys. You know, I think they had, for example, Mike Singletary, who definitely was probably every year arguably the MVP. But I really think that it was their local players that stepped up consistently and were the driving force, right? So there's always that factor. But this is my favorite conversation, talking about the importance of talent versus the importance of character. And here's what I've learned in coaching. No matter what happens, you don't get to pick your leadership, okay? So if your leaders are, and if you want a particular player to be your leader, that's good, but the players will follow the best player, okay? The players will always follow the best player. They'll follow him on the court, off the court. They will always follow the best player. I know that as being one of the best players when I used to play, and I know that when I went to different teams and I wasn't the best player. You look up to the best player. Here's what happens in coaching. If your best player is a good guy, then you're going to be awesome. Your team will be awesome. And what I mean by good guy, he's the way that I described it earlier. If your best player comes early, stays late, says the right things, and he really, truly cares about winning, then your team is going to be awesome. And I believe that a good example of that is Jeremy Lin. right? I think Jeremy Lin is not only the best player, but every story that I've ever heard about Jeremy Lin is about his character being really high, his work ethic being really high, his desire to make the right play on the court being really high. And I think if you look at Fubon in the past, I think Mike Singletary was a perfect example of that. Not only was he the best player, but he really drove that team, right? You saw him getting the team into huddles. You saw they were down 5 points and he's motivating the team and he's motivating the crowd. If Mike Singletary does not act like that, they will not be as good. Even if his talent is there, they will not be as good. So what I try to find when I'm recruiting is I try to find talented players that really want to win the way, for example, Mike Singletary. I'm using Mike Singletary as an example because I'm sure your listeners, guys, will really appreciate or understand that. And so when I'm scouting, I really look for high talent and high character. It's really hard to find. And I've made a bunch of mistakes in the past where I've gotten super high talent, right? But the character just wasn't really there. And then I've had teams where you want a certain player to be a leader and he's not a great guy. And unfortunately, the players will follow, they'll follow that guy. You know, they really will. They really will. I'll give you another great example from the P League is Brandon Gilbeck. Okay. So Brandon Gilbeck is a player that I scouted, and Brandon Gilbeck is a player that I brought to the Bandits to try him out and watch him in the Bandits before I brought him to the Dreamers, because I was already coaching with the Dreamers when I was the coach and GM of the Bandits. And so we brought Brandon into the Bandits, and we loved everything about him. We loved his style of play, his defense, everything, his work ethic. But Brandon Gilbeck is not a leader. He's just not. He's not. He's a great guy, and I love Brandon, but he's not a leader. Okay. The problem with the Dreamers for those years, one of the problems was we needed Brandon to be a leader, and he wasn't, right? So what would happen, and I'm sure you guys have seen watching Dreamers play, if Brandon was upset, if Brandon had a bad start, if Brandon was frustrated, we often went in that direction as a team. Now we tried really hard to figure out different ways around that. We tried really hard to work with Brandon as a person, and he got better. Like he got better for sure. But that's a good example to me of you want him to be, you know, a leader. You want him to have a certain approach to the group, but he's not necessarily a leader. And I used to say to Brandon, I'd say, Brandon, your energy is our team's energy. If your energy is high and positive, we're going to play amazing. If your energy is low and frustrated, we're going to struggle. And so when I'm scouting guys, I really do try and find a combination of all that. High level talent. We call it, and then we call the character, I have a term for it that you can study. We call it E3. So it's energy, effort, and enthusiasm. Okay, so energy is the body language, the energy that the player is giving to his teammates. Is he making eye contact in the timeouts? Is he excited when he's on the bench? Does he give everybody a lot of high fives? Is his body language positive? And then the effort. Does he play hard, right? Does he play with great effort? You know, and then the enthusiasm. Does he show that enthusiasm to his teammates? We say giving or taking. Is he giving or is he taking? You know, if you're upset and you're frustrated and argue with the referees, then you're taking energy. If you're high-fiving everybody and you're happy for your teammates, then you're giving energy, right? So we try and find guys that have high talent and high E3. And it's hard. You know why it's hard? Because a lot of super talented players are young. They're young. And most young guys, they haven't been through enough to know how to have high E3, to know how to be a leader. So it's very difficult. I think this year in the Bandits, I thought we did a good job of recruiting high character and high talent, but even our most talented guys were still kind of young, and I still think they need to grow and develop. And I think it's an example of kind of why we didn't play great in the championship game. I think the young nervousness kind of came out a bit. So for me, it's talent and E3, and it's a hard thing to do when you're scouting. You notice in the P League the last couple of years, many imports get cut and changed out quite quickly, right? Because of all the mistakes that people make. We probably too often go for talent first, right? You have to try and find the balance. Yeah.
So would you say then?
So Fu, go ahead.
Yeah. So would you say then, if you have a good three per player, then you would likely have good chemistry on your team?
Yeah, exactly. So, but chemistry doesn't always win championships, Fu. You need a blend, right? So, for sure, if you have a full group of guys with high character, high E3, for sure, the chemistry will be amazing. Practices will be fun. Team meetings will be great. Film sessions will be great. But, you still need a couple of those guys with special talent, and that's where, you have to be also, as a coach or general manager, a little bit of compromise, right? And then that's where you have to have a coach who's in the locker room who kind of knows how to manage all of that as well. And that's where I think my experience in Taiwan has helped me to understand how to manage, the talent, the high character, low talent, high character, high talent, low character, and how we manage all of that.
Yeah. Right. So now we're getting to the meat.
Yeah.
So that's if you have.
This is my favorite stuff right here. I could talk about this.
Yeah.
For
No.
months.
Right. This is we talk about so much, like, because we always argue, like, would you rather have TJ Tucker?
Yep.
A hardworking blue collar player.
Yep.
Or James Harden, right?
Sure.
Who doesn't want to? So then how do you manage all these egos? I mean, because we've seen that all the way across.
Yeah, I think
decades of basketball.
It's so hard, Han. It's so difficult. And if any coach gives you like a straight black and white answer, they're just lying to you. Because every team, every season has a life of its own, right? And even different players will act differently on different teams in different situations based on their relationship with the coach and the way the coach coaches. Not everybody can play for me, and I can't coach everybody the same way. So I think you manage it with a great coaching staff. I think that's the first thing. I think you have to have different personalities on your coaching staff that know how to, or that can relate or connect with different players better. I think that's really important. I think as a head coach, if you think that you're going to connect with every single guy the exact way that you want to, I think that's never going to happen, right? Like any business anywhere, the manager needs, some help. That needs, different departments to connect with different people in different ways. And so for me, it starts with the coaching staff. But yeah, I love the analogy of, PJ Tucker versus James Harden. If you have 5 PJ Tuckers on the floor, for sure, you're going to have great chemistry, but you're not going to score very much, right? And if you have 5 James Hardens on the court, yeah, you're going to have a lot of scoring, but no defense and no chemistry, right? So I think that's why we have different positions. That's why we have the ability to make substitutions. I think even on my team this year in the CEBL, we would have different lineups that played completely different. And you just change one guy on that lineup and the whole lineup changes, for better or for worse. I think so. Again, where I talk about my philosophy in building bonds with players, when you do have strong bonds with your players, you kind of know what to expect from them. And then kind of how to manage them. So, for example, we had a very talented player on our team this year named Tajay Moore. He played for the Portland Trail Blazers. Easily one of the best players I've ever coached, was so talented. However, Tajay's young and he's still learning, and his leadership could have been much better. And I think that's part of the growth and development and me working with him and building the relationship with him. There were days, Han, where I couldn't say certain things to Tajay. It just would not have been good. It would not have helped. And then there were other days where, you sit down and you manage him and you work with him and you talk to him and you learn about what he's going through and different things like that. So, I think it takes a great coaching staff to manage the different personalities. And then it takes a coach who spends a lot of individual time with the players to know what they're going through and know how to talk to them. I think one of the first things you can do as a coach is when you get a new player on your team, ask him about his favorite coach that he's ever played for. Why was this? Why did you play well for this coach? What did this coach do that made you play so well? And what did this coach say to you that gave you confidence? And tell me about those practices and tell me about, the little things that made you play at a high level. And I try to do that with a lot of our players. And then that way, you know, I learn kind of the best way to approach them. But like I said earlier, there's no clear answer to those questions. There's no black and white response. I think sometimes too much talent is really, 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 really hard to manage. It's hard to make substitutions. You know, I think our Canadian national team was a good example of that this summer. I think there was little bit too much talent, a weird substitution pattern, and not enough blue collar, not enough, you know, role playing. I think you need that. I think, you know, the dream team this summer is a perfect example. You got Devin Booker, who's, you know, 25 points a game in the NBA, and he goes out and plays, you know, a FIBA style where he scores 6 points a game, rebounds and guards and passes the ball. And I think, yeah, you got to get guys to believe in their role. That's also a whole other podcast in itself. But it comes from, you know, building bonds with players and developing a relationship with guys where they trust you and they want to win first. But man, there's some guys out there that won't do that. There are some guys that you come across coaching that will not come off the bench. They will not give up shots. They will not sacrifice their bodies. They don't want to come early. They don't want to stay late. They don't want to do the extra work. It's tough, man. It's a tough business to be in because like talent, character, how do we find the blend? Where are those guys? You know, it's tough, right? Yeah.
No, we see that every day in the NBA coming in and out. You know, we don't have to name names, but examples are out there for us to see. And that's why we have these questions. Colin, you have an interesting question on confidence. Here we go. Shoot it.
Yeah. So since like you have already like mentioned so many enthusiasm or maybe like work ethics stuff. So I think like Taiwan is like more like an Asian place, you know, like Asian is more like I won't say that, but I feel like we have lack of confidence compared to like European,
I agree,
American.
Yeah.
So let's talk about building up confidence. So since you have already like talked about, we need a high pressure defense or some stuff. So I think like most of the players in maybe in Taiwan or maybe Asia and other places, they will easy lack of confidence. So let's talk about how you build your players' confidence under high pressure. So especially in seasons. So especially maybe they have a shooting slump or something. So they may easily like just get dropped in the performance. So how do you build the confidence?
Man, this is another amazing question. So it was the hardest part about coaching in Taiwan was the lack of confidence that the players had in themselves, right? And so I tried to do as much research as possible. I tried to figure it out. I'm not the type of coach that just kind of accepts things. I've never been like that. I want to know the root cause to everything. And so when I studied and I asked people about basketball in Taiwan, I kind of continuously got the same answer about the way that development and the way that the game is taught at a young age in Taiwan. I kind of always got the same answer. And what I found was, first of all, when we talk about, like earlier, we talked about how the Bandits is really growing the game in Canada, right? Like the CEBL is an example. If you think about Taiwanese basketball, most Taiwanese players grew up watching the local players in Taiwan pass the ball to the imports, right? Like from a very young age. Obviously, there's the exception to that. There was some very good Taiwanese players over time. Tian Lei, Beast. Obviously, there's the exception. But I think the problem with basketball in Taiwan, that if you start at the top, it was always about the locals supporting the imports, right? So that's the first thing. And I think what happens with that is the youth, the young players, they don't see a lot of Taiwanese players themselves, older players, pros, playing with true confidence, taking tough shots, making big shots late in a game, you know, the coach giving them the ball and telling them to shoot. So I think that's one of the most interesting aspects. I think it's kind of like the sociology of the game, the way that the game is introduced to young people in Taiwan. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing was, anytime I got a chance to be around a high school coach in Taiwan or a university coach in Taiwan or ask about the coaches and their philosophies, they are very difficult coaches to play for. They're very hard. They're very, and you guys know
I'm the Canadian Thibodeau.
Yeah, I know. No, but we have to talk about the whole Thibodeau. We have to talk about that as well. We got to get to that. But the Taiwanese coaches, I think, are very mistake oriented, and I don't think there's I don't think there's a philosophy. For sure, for me, I'm what you call a 3-time guy. So I'll let you make the mistake once. We will correct it. We will never, ever, you'll never, ever hear me upset at a player about something that we did not work on. Okay. Right. Then if you make the mistake a second time, we will have to get a little bit more in depth into the correction, why the mistake was made, so on and so forth. If you make the mistake a third time, okay, now I'm upset. Now I get my emotions, kind of take over, and I'll become aggressive. But with that mindset, I really allow for mistakes. I really do. And I really encourage mistakes. And I want our players to feel like they can play through some mistakes. Now, some players that play for me may not agree with that. They might say, hey, no, he was hard on me or whatever. But if you really, if you really go through my process, I really do encourage, the opportunity to make a mistake and us correct it and, us get better through the process, where I talk about our togetherness and our bonds, right? What I saw in Taiwan was a very controlled style of play in high school, very controlled, very mistake oriented. If you make a mistake, you come off right away. And I think that mentality is even okay at the pro level. If you make a mistake, you come off right away. But I think the problem is at the youth level, the young players have to have a chance to make mistakes. Right. I don't think they play enough games at that age. From what I learned, I don't think there is enough games. I don't think there's enough, in-game rep or opportunity. I think in Canada, our youth play too many games right now. Like there's too much. There's too much. So I do think there is a balance. And then I also think the problem in Taiwan, for example, is a lot of the coaches and a lot of the people who are responsible for the development have not had a lot of experience outside of Taiwan. And I think that causes problems. I think if you mix that all together, there's a lack of growth and development towards building, confidence. And when I saw high school practices and when I talked to the Taiwanese players about what a practice was like, there, in my opinion, from what I heard and what I saw, there was way too much conditioning, way too much emphasis on 5-on-5 structure, not enough emphasis on skill and development, and not enough emphasis on what we call here small games. I love to play small games, 2-on-2 full court, where the players are free and they get to make decisions at high speed. One of the things that we did in Taiwan a lot that I think really helped our dreamers was we did a lot of full court small games where they got to play free and play with confidence and shoot tough shots and difficult shots. And then we did a lot of 3-on-3. I think 3-on-3 is one of the best ways to build your offense, to build your defense, where all three players in 3-on-3 are always involved in the possession. A lot of times you play 5-on-5, right? If you play 20 minutes of 5-on-5, you might get one guy that doesn't even touch the ball that much. You get one guy, right? He just doesn't because of the plays that you're working on or the offense that you're doing, right? You might get a guy who stands in the corner a lot, or maybe your center for that time, you're only working on middle ball screen, right? So your center doesn't get a chance to get involved. But when you play 3-on-3, all three guys are touching the ball. All three guys are involved. All three guys are engaged. And so I think in Taiwan, it was really hard to build confidence in the players because they weren't used to my practice style, right? And they weren't used to me getting upset. Now, they're used to players getting upset. I got upset with our players. I had the Tom Thibodeau image, guys, because I got upset when they weren't aggressive enough. I got upset when they weren't confident enough. I got upset when they didn't play to their potential with what we here call swag or E3. I didn't see enough of that. That's what made me upset. I didn't get upset because a guy went and made a mistake. You know, a perfect example that I can give you, and I'm proud of that. Like, is Derek Lee, the English name, right? Doe. Okay, so when Doe played for me the very first year in P League for the Dreamers, the whole country was sending me messages. How did you get Derek to play with so much confidence? How did you get Derek to shoot threes? How did you get Derek to, you know, Derek played for Oolong and only offensive rebound pass out. You know, well, the first month for me with Derek, I was screaming at him because he would not shoot enough. I was screaming at him because he would not take a three. I was screaming at him because he wasn't offensively aggressive enough. I knew he could do it. I needed him to do it. But I was upset with him for not being aggressive, not for making mistakes. And I think that's the difference between me and the Taiwanese coaches that I've been around, is the Taiwanese coaches get mad at their players for making mistakes. I get mad at my players for not playing with confidence. I think there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference.
If you're playing with confidence and you make mistakes, you will see me say it's okay. You will see me reward the player. If I see a player out there making mistakes because he's scared, because he's being soft, because he's passing up an open shot, now I'm upset. And I think that's what took the players the most time to get used to me with. And some of them, the Taiwanese players, when I got, see, Achi is an awesome example because Achi was still young. Achi was still impressionable. When I got a Taiwanese player who was maybe 30 years old, 31, 32, it was hard for me to manage because those are the guys,
those things.
Right? Like those are the guys that are wired and you're not going to change them. Right. And so that was where I think some of my struggles in Taiwan, some of the negativity came from, with certain players were just very, very difficult for me to work with. But I loved working with the young Taiwanese players. Like I really think Jay Chen, I see Jay Chen play for the Dreamers. I freaking love Jay Chen. And if you ask Jay Chen, I really motivated him to play that way. I would constantly get upset with him about passing up an open shot or not being aggressive enough. And now you see him playing. He's like a spark plug for the Dreamers, right? And he's a very important. He's a very important piece, right? So yeah, that's the best way I can answer that. So when it comes to confidence, confidence comes from work. If you do not do the work, you will never, ever even have the opportunity to experience confidence. So we try and really instill a work ethic, and we try to build a routine. And when you have a good daily routine, then it's easier to be confident, right? So for example, let's just say we're shooting threes. If you want to be a great 3-point shooter and you want to have confidence, and confidence comes from the relationship you have with your coach too. So I will have confidence in you if I see you shooting threes every day before practice, every day after practice, even when you're tired. If I see you taking those shots in practice, if I see you getting better and shooting with confidence in practice, then I will have the confidence in you in a game. And in turn, you should have the confidence. But if you're not working on your game, if you're not building the confidence in your body, in your play, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So comes from work. It comes from our relationship. And that's, like I said earlier about my coaching philosophy, a lot of what I do comes from the togetherness that occurs from you doing your job at a high level. Like, I'm a human being too. All of this is human nature. If my players don't do the work, I'm not going to trust them. Right? And if my players don't think that I do the work, if they don't see me doing the work, if I don't come prepared, they're not going to trust me either. And if you don't have trust, you have nothing. Right? So, it's kind of like a cycle. It starts with the work. We build the bond, we build the confidence, we build the trust, and you have to do it every day. And so that's kind of where
what you just talked about. Yeah, what you just talked about reminds me of Jeremy Lin when people ask him about his favorite coach to play for, he said Mike D'Antoni because he could play free on the court. Yep. And even if he makes a mistake passing, he would know the coach would back him up. It's a calculated risk. It's a pass that could lead to an easy layup, these types of things, instead of like just pulling him on a short leash. And
but
you could see it in his body language. Yeah,
and D'Antoni didn't trust Jeremy Lin just because he saw Jeremy Lin do the work, right? He saw the passion, he saw the toughness, he saw all of that in Jeremy Lin. And I tell people the stories about Achi all the time. I think that my time and energy with Achi and the Dreamers building that culture of confidence and toughness and togetherness, you still see it now in the Dreamers. And I really do think Achi responded well. Achi did the work. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't me just telling him to do things. Achi did the work, but he was willing to do the work, and I think, like I said this many times, he's going to be a great player for a long time because he was willing to do the work, right?
Yeah. So a little questions that come up to my mind is that, do you guys I don't know, like, do you guys punish bad shot selection? So for example, like, I think like Asian coach or Taiwanese coach is like, okay, so when you take a bad shot, they would just just stop you right away, or maybe just punish you or something. So, but I gotta say, like, when we are watching NBA, like maybe KD, DeMar DeRozan, they have that sweet spot. Like, even though you got him like perfectly, they just make the shot. So do you guys, like, in Europe or maybe in US, in Canada, so do you guys punish bad shot selection in youth level? So because I think like in like most Asian country, it was like every time, like in U level, you gotta take the best shot, like maybe wide open threes, wide open layup or stuff. So do you guys like punish best shot selections?
So shot selection is one of the most sensitive coaching topics out there. After we talk about talent and the importance of talent and character, after that conversation, it's shot selection, man. So one of the things I did with the
basketball
Bandits,
IQ, essentially. Basketball IQ.
Exactly. One of the things I did with the Bandits this summer is I promised myself I would not say anything in regards to shot selection. I promised myself I would not ever criticize a shot choice. And I think a lot of my players loved it. So our shooting guards told me that they had one of the best summers of their life, the best experience of their life, because they knew I was not going to criticize their shot selection. They knew they could play free. They knew that they could play with confidence. They knew that they could take any shot. So here's my philosophy on shot selection. I think if you have to tell the players it's a bad shot, then you're doing something wrong as a coach. Okay. Now, it's on you. It's on you, because if you didn't do a good job of installing your offense and explaining where the shots are going to come from, like if we call a play, these guys know where the shots are going to occur. They know where the shots are going to come from in a particular offense, like in a particular play, right? The other thing that I try to do, and I thought we did a good job of this with the Dreamers, is we were probably the first team in Taiwan to play really small, really fast, and shoot a lot of threes. Like, we were probably the first team to really do that. And so those guys knew what shots we liked and didn't like. I think when it comes to shot selection, the only time there's a bad shot is when there's a guy wide open, one pass away. That's the only time there's a bad shot. And I think we did that a few times this year with the Bandits, where we missed one extra pass. But in general, sometimes that's not even the right pass, because what happens if I'm a 40% three-point shooter and the guy beside me is 33%, and I might be a little bit guarded, but you're wide open. I still want the 40% guy shooting shots. So when it comes to shot selection, I think you have to spend most of your time and energy on where you want your shots from as a team, where they are going to come from in your offense, spending time and energy teaching that, and then letting the guys play free. Like we had a shooter this summer named Kobe McEwen, who's a great shooter. He ended up being the Canadian Player of the Year. Kobe played in Poland last year on a very high-level team in Europe. And he told me that every single shot that he took in Europe was criticized. Should have done it earlier, should have done it later, should not have shot it, et cetera, et cetera. He shot the three for me. He had his best year ever, points production percentages for me. I never said a word to him. I never said a word. And don't get me wrong, Kong, he took a bunch of bad shots. Don't get me wrong. He took a bunch of bad shots. But I just think there's so much value in your players being confident and playing free.
Right.
Now,
right. Yeah.
If I have a bad shooter, I will tell him I do not want him shooting certain shots. I will tell him that. And we had a guy this year on our team with the Bandits who was not a great shooter, and I wanted him to make sure that he passed it, and if he caught it, that he went into handoffs right away. I did not want him shooting, and he got really good at it. And the great shooters around him, they knew it too. So when he caught it, they knew a handoff was coming, right? So we spent time and energy on that. That's where I spent my time and energy. In Taiwan, it's funny because the first year I was in the P League where we shot a lot of threes, we did not have very many good shooters. Like we just did not. And so what I did with that team was I made sure I never talked about good shots or bad shots. I never talked about them. Why? Because I don't want bad shooters shooting with bad confidence. I want bad shooters shooting with good confidence. Maybe that's more bad shots, maybe, but I still think that if you coach like that, your players they'll play with more confidence and you'll make a few more shots, right? And I think Achi was a good example of that. Dowei was a good example of that. If you look, Kenny Chen, he shot the ball for me pretty well. He did not shoot it well last year because he was not given the same confidence. He was not given the same opportunities. He was not given the same role, right? So, yeah, I think the youth in Canada, we do not criticize shot selection that much. I think it's a good thing. I think that if you're a bad shooter and you keep shooting shots, for sure your coach should get on you, and for sure your teammates will probably get on you. And one of the best coaches in Canada, university coach, one of the best coaches in the world, his name is Dave Smart. He was very, very, very aggressive with shot selection. If you did not shoot a certain percentage, you were not even allowed to take shots. And I think that works at the U Sports level. I think that does work in certain places. I don't think it's a great way to coach at the pros. I think we need confidence in our guys. Our guys need to feel good about themselves. And so, yeah, I try to stay away from shot selection. I think it's important. But if you're a bad shooter, then it's your coach's job to make sure that you're not taking shots.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one last thing. So about shooting. So, like a lot of coaches, like especially import coaches, have talked about like Taiwanese shooting are just bad, like low 30s, like free throws is like low 70s. So I think like you have a lot of experience about like how Taiwanese like practicing shooting, and I think you have like some kind of reason to explain that. So, but I really want to know, like, for example, in Canada, so how you guys like practice, or maybe how you guys emphasize shootings in your team. So maybe just have a look for those Taiwanese coaches.
Yeah, well, I tried to explain this many times in Taiwan over the years. I was really disappointed with the shooting. If you look at the percentages, for example, in the P League the last couple of years, the individual percentages, the team percentages, they're horrible. Like there's teams that are going through the entire P League season shooting under 30% from three. It's just unacceptable at the pro level, right? Why? Because shooting is controllable. You can go in the gym and work on your shot. Athleticism, you can only improve your athleticism so much. You only have so much control, things like that. But I do believe that there's no excuse for being a bad shooter. You can really control it. And I think, again, it goes back to what I learned about the high school development, the youth development in Taiwan. A lot of team structure, a lot of conditioning, a lot of running, a lot of 5-on-5, a lot of play. Whereas in North America and in Europe, for sure, there is way more skill and development at the youth level, like just way more. We produce just way better shooters. I also think that in Taiwan, there's a serious lack of strength and conditioning. And I think in North America, we start lifting more weights earlier. And I definitely believe it helps with shooting. Definitely believe it.
There's a myth in Taiwan that if you pump the iron too early, you don't grow tall. Really, seriously, that's the myth going around when I was a kid. And
Han, you being a doctor, you know for sure that all the research is against that now. Like in North America, you've got 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 9 and 10 starting with, compound exercises, and it's strengthening their joints and they're getting stronger. So I know for me, I was a great shooter. Like I played on the Canadian national team. I played professionally because I was a great shooter. And I started when I was 12 years old, making 500 shots a day. And I know that the youth now in North America are starting that even earlier. I have a son who's 13. We shoot together a lot. We work on his game, and we really work on shooting a lot. And I just don't think that the kids do that enough in Taiwan. I don't think that it's actually mechanically taught properly. I don't think they have a good development system of teaching, because I think if they did, we wouldn't see so many unorthodox shots. Like that's the other thing that I noticed in Taiwan. Okay, the percentages are bad, but what's really frustrating or confusing was how bad the form and technique was. Like so many shooters shooting the ball with weird form and weird technique, awkward, right? Where it's not being taught, mechanically the way we teach it, I think, in North America. So I think it's a couple part answer. The first part is just don't think the youth shoot enough by themselves in a gym, 1 or 2 guys at a very young age, shooting. I just don't think they do it. Second of all, I think their practices, there's just a lack of skill and development, right? Ball handling, if you're a good ball handler, you'll be a better shooter. The touch of the ball, the strength of your fingertips, the control, the dexterity, the coordination, it'll all be heightened. I just don't think there's a lot of development. A lot of my practices that I did with the Dreamers, the guys weren't used to how much skill and development we did. They just weren't used to it. And I think it contributed to us having success, but I also do think it contributed to us playing with more confidence. And that's at the pro level. That needs to occur, at the youth level. So I just think that there's too much structure in Taiwan with the youth and not enough skill and development. And then I don't think there's the same culture. Like, for example, I lived in Taichung. When I went to a basketball court outside in Taichung, it was amazing. Everybody's playing pickup. Everybody's playing. But you don't see people actually doing skills like shooting. You just see 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, but you don't really see the skill work. And I think that's where the game is behind in Taiwan. And that starts at the youth age. It's just simple skill and development. I think everybody knows the Steph Curry story, right? Where when he was in 9th grade, he changed his shot that summer, and it was really difficult. It was really painful. And he just shot thousands of shots every single day until he corrected his shot at 9th grade. That's 13, 14 years old. Right. Then at the same time, his father wouldn't let him shoot 3-pointers. Right. And now this is the greatest 3-point shooter in the history of basketball, did not shoot 3-pointers until he was strong enough and old enough. Right. So I just don't think in Taiwan there's a really good development model for the youth, especially when it comes to shooting. And I think that's why we see, the bad shooting technique. And then at the same time, Taiwanese coaches, they don't give confidence. They take confidence. I'll give you another example of Taiwanese coaching that was really surprising to me. In North America, as a coach, when you do a press conference after the game, okay, you are taught to, when you lose as a coach, you never blame your players. Never blame your players.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You just don't. It's, it's your fault or the circumstance, but you never blame your players. When you win, you give all credit to your players.
Right.
When I would have the Taiwanese press conferences of Taiwanese coaches translated to me, I was shocked. Every press conference, when Taiwanese coach loses, he blames players. He blames imports. He blames local players. He blames players. Where every time Taiwanese coach wins, they say, oh, our system. It was our system. It was our style of play. Today was great. Our togetherness today was outstanding. And so I think that's also a way that the Taiwanese coaches and the media, they take the confidence away from the players. I think that was one of the most profound experiences for me was Taiwanese press conference. Was, when they lose, they literally blame the players. That's not in North America. That's not a normal thing for sure.
Yeah. I gotta say, like the press conference nowadays in Taiwan are just so dull. Like even I'm not saying coaches, even players like that. So every time they win, even though they have a good performance or something, they said, "Oh, it's team effort." So the coaches let me to do certain things. So it's so dull. Like
I agree.
In NBA is like every player is like, "Oh, it's my effort or something. Oh, I do something good." But like right now, like I would say, like in the past, I think there's like maybe 5,000 people watching the post conference, but now like it seems like no one watching.
Is that right? Well, when I was coaching there, I was quite interested sometimes in listening to the other coaches. But one of the things I really noticed was how quickly they would blame the players in Taiwan after a loss. I never really listen to the players. I would just kind of quickly, listen and translate what the other coaches say. And it was quite often blaming the players. And I also do. I think that contributes to a lack of confidence for sure.
That must hurt. That must hurt. Ouch. I mean, yeah. No, leaders should never throw their teammates under the bus. Never. It's truly a leader.
It happened a lot with certain teams that we played. I always thought it was interesting.
All right.
So do you keep in touch with your players from Taiwan?
Yeah, I do. During the season, this past season, I would reach out to them quite often. Jay Chen, I would send messages to Achi. A lot of the English-speaking players I still talk to all the time, a lot of the imports. I follow all of the players. I loved my experience in Taiwan, especially the Dreamers and the players. I thought they had a chance at a championship last year. I really thought they had a chance. And I was excited for them for sure. I definitely still talk to them, and I think it'll be very interesting this year. Seeing Kenny Chen on a different team and some different imports. I think it'll be very interesting.
Are you gonna try recruiting them to play for the Bandits?
I talked about that before. That's another thing. The P League with the import rules and the way the P League is designed, you need a very specific player in the P League. I think it's you really have to find a specific import, a specific player. And the same can be said about the CEBL, with the Elam, the target score, the way we play here. You also need a very specific player. I think there's definitely some imports in Taiwan that would be very successful in the CEBL, definitely for sure. I don't think many locals would be able to play just with the level of talent and athleticism, but definitely some imports for sure.
True.
Cool. So would you still be able to talk about some Canadian basketball?
Let's do it, man. I would love to.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can't let you go without talking about supposedly the dream team of Canada this year.
Yeah.
And are you disappointed? Or, I mean, the French, it was a good team. They went into the finals.
Look, they definitely lost to a great basketball team. I mean, there's a lot to be said too, Hunt, about playing a team at home, right? Like that crowd and that atmosphere.
That crowd was huge.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. Winning on the road in any sport, let alone a country, you're playing against a country, is really tough. But I was very disappointed that Zach Edey did not play. I still don't understand it. I don't understand why he didn't play. I'm friends with people in his circle. I know his agent and agency and stuff, and I just don't understand. I understand what the narrative is. The Grizzlies didn't really want him to, but I don't accept that when LeBron James is playing and Steph Curry is playing. I don't understand it. So I can't really comment on why, but I think that that team had tremendous talent, but it did not have good structure. It did not have good role players, right? I think the role players that they had were beneath the role players of other teams, meaning Dwight Powell, he's a good role player, but he's not a starting 4 or 5. No. I think Kelly Olynyk is at the end of his career. I think Jamal Murray really struggled to play alongside Shea. I don't think he was used to that role of not having the ball in his hands. And I think we were really missing some power forwards and a center. And I think the dynamic between Shea and Jamal just wasn't great. Okay. I didn't think there was great chemistry. Thought Rowan Barrett played really well. You know, he's the type of guy whose game.
Oh, Barrett, he shined.
Yeah, I think his game kind of fits anywhere, right? He's like that energy wing 2-3. You know, he can kind of play in any system. But I don't think we had great structure as far as itemized role players playing their role at a high level. And I think if you look at the U.S., they did. Believe it or not, they knew when Steph was hot, they got him the ball. When KD was hot, they got him the ball. We did not do a good job of that. But I think the biggest problem with our national team was we did not have good interior play, especially on defense. And the French, they kicked our butt inside. They went inside. The whole game we switched, like we were switching ball screens and most actions, we switched it. They absolutely punished us inside. And I think I was so disappointed that Zach Edey didn't play. I really was. I think he would have made a huge difference. And I don't get it. I don't know why he didn't play. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, can't speak for him, but for sure you wish. Go ahead.
I gotta say, like, the defense are just bad, you know, like they just don't have size, you know. The biggest one, I think the biggest is already, who's that? I forgot, Porter or something. I remember there's a center over there. But anyway, let's talk about the offense. It's like, I feel like the team is like SGA oriented, but but other player is not like the role players, you know.
Right.
Like, for example, I don't know, maybe Dylan Brooks or maybe RJ Barrett. I don't think they are traditionally can be looked at, say, 3D or something. So I think Canadian team is really relies on isolation of SGA, but the system doesn't fit well. So what do you think about the offense of the Canadian basketball?
Yeah, I agree with that. The problem is, again, like with no interior play, I think you have to have a mix in FIBA. You have to be able to go inside. You definitely need high level 3-point shooting. But you do, if you look around the world, the ball moves very well in the FIBA game, right? It's not an isolated, ISO-oriented style. It's just not. The U.S. have success with ISO orientation play because their ISO players are just so good. Their actual most effective offense will be isolation. Like if you study synergy and you study the advanced analytics, Kevin Durant is one of the best ISO players in the world. Steph Curry, one of the best ISO players in the world. LeBron James, one of the best ISO. Like, you go down the road, Canada, maybe SGA is a good ISO, but if you only have one in the FIBA game, it's easy to guard. It's very easy to guard defensively because there's no 3 in the key on defense. The spacing is smaller. You know, you can sit a guy under the basket like Rudy Gobert. So I really do believe you need more flow offense. You need more equal opportunity offense. And I really believe you need to be really, really good in transition. And I actually don't think we had enough shooting around SGA. And I think Jamal Murray is obviously a great shooter, but he needs the ball in his hands to make shots. I think the difference between Steph Curry and SGA or even Jamal Murray, for example, is he flies around. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He comes off pin downs. He comes off screens. He comes off movement and flow and gets his shot, whereas SGA needs to take 10 dribbles, you know, to get his shot off, right? So I think if you study the best teams in the world, you see what we call equal opportunity offense. The ball flows, the ball moves. They start with certain actions, and you don't know who's going to get a shot. Everybody's ready. You know, it's like the best available shot, they take it. I do think that Canada was very heavily oriented on SGA. It was very one-dimensional actions to get the offense going instead of multiple moving parts, multiple actions. And I don't think we played very well in transition. We didn't have very much transition. And, you know, when I'm coaching the Bandits, I'll tell you one thing, like if we get out and run and we have good transition, our half-court offense works really well. But if you're relying on half-court offense at this level, the defense is going to be good, you know, especially in FIBA, right? So, yeah, I didn't love the offense, and I did think it was very one-dimensional for sure.
Yeah. So maybe just talk about transition.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about transition. So like I gotta say, like compared to teams, other Olympic team, other country, is like the athleticism of Canadian is like kind of already very good. So what is the reason why that you can make a good transition in the Olympics?
Well, in the pool play, they got more transition. They got out and ran a little bit, and it was good. But I think in the Olympics, these teams are so good offensively, they rarely make mistakes. So if there's low turnovers, you're not going to run as much. If the other team is scoring on you or going inside and running good offense, the way France was, then it's really hard to run, right? If a team is going to shoot tons of threes against you and they play fast, okay, then you're going to be able to play fast and you're going to get long rebounds and you're going to be able to run. So I think a part of it, Kong, was that the offense of France in that game was very well put together. It was very controlled. They took good shots. They got the ball inside like crazy. So when you're getting scored on, you're definitely not running. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to run, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is they went to the foul line like crazy. So anytime, I forget the stats, but they like tripled our free throws. They went to the free throw line but because they were going inside, right? Because they were being aggressive, they were
attacking the paint. It wasn't like they were baiting fouls. It's a different thing.
Exactly. So
had they had Joel Embiid, that would have been a different story.
Sure. No, he'd be flopping for sure and crying. But yeah, so I think the style of play of the French just made it really difficult to run. You know, sometimes it happens, Kong. Sometimes you play in a game and the other team just is really controlled and they run good offense and they don't turn the ball over and they take good shots. Those teams are hard to run against. And I think France just played a beautiful game that game against Canada. They were better in every aspect. They got to the foul line so many times, so that eliminates runouts. They did not shoot bad shots. That eliminates a lot of runouts. And they didn't turn it over. That eliminates a lot of runouts, right?
Right. And the balls were moving.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Their balls were moving. It was keeping the defenders guessing.
It's so surprised that like France didn't get much turnover though. But like the last thing, one of the last things. So apart from the Canadian basketball, so I think you have watched the whole Olympics, right? So any like players or team that in the Olympics you are interested in? So
love Serbia. Absolutely love Serbia. I forget the name of Alex. I forget their point guard. He came off the bench.
Oh yeah, the guy.
The looking at him in the NBA on a team right now, but loved him. He's the one who got the 2 steals for breakaways against the U.S. Like loved him. Obviously Jokic, special, but loved watching Serbia. I'm a huge fan of Germany. You know, Germany's coach is Canadian, Gordy Herbert.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he coached me back on the national team when I used to try out for the national team back in the day. So I know Gordy, and I'm a huge fan of him. So I loved watching Germany play. The French were great. I mean, the way they played, they used their team well. The ball, like you said, the ball moved. They went inside. They had physical play. They had good shooting. They had good guard play. I think the Olympics is always the best basketball for me to watch anywhere, and there's always a lot to learn. But yeah, I loved watching Germany and Serbia. I'm also a fan of Japan. I think Japan's a really interesting team to talk about, because when I was in Taiwan, I often told people in Taiwan, you guys need to really watch the way the Japanese are playing. They're small like you guys, they're quick like you guys, but they all shoot the ball very well. And I think if you learn about Japanese development, there is a stronger emphasis on skill and development right now in Japan. It's very popular because I've studied it myself and I follow some of the Japanese national coaches and stuff. And obviously they have a few NBA players. Okay, so that makes a huge difference for sure. But what's impressive to me is the Japanese, the local small guards, how good they are right now. And I think
they were fearless. Fearless. Absolutely fearless.
Absolutely fearless. Yeah, and so that was
probably three episodes of podcast about Japanese basketball.
Man. Yeah, I bet you have.
So many Taiwanese admire them.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. So that was another team I liked watching for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so Coach, our time is really, really winding down, but we can't let you go without sharing your thoughts. What's it like to play with Steve Nash, and talk about his impact on Canadian basketball.
Well, I never got to play in a game with Steve Nash. I used to go to the Canadian national team tryouts when I was younger, and he was like a veteran on the team. So I got to do some practices with him, some workouts. Some of my best friends played on the national team with him for different summers. So, yeah, the thing with Steve Nash, though, is he really embodies my coaching philosophy. As a player, he embodied it. So people in Canada, guys, they talk about Steve's work ethic was legendary. Like how hard he worked on his game, how often he worked on his game. And just like we talked about the Japanese guards, he was fearless. Steve was fearless. And people talk about his conditioning. He could just run and run and run and run forever. So he was always in great shape. Yeah, so Steve Nash was always my idol as a player. And when I talk about, playing the position as a point guard, being tough, being fearless, putting the team first, having a very high skill level, working closely with your head coach. Yeah, Steve Nash he is everything that I believe and respect in the game. And when I met him, he was the nicest guy. There's a lot of stories on the national team back in the day where, the players on the national team, he was the only NBA player. And so the Canadian national team would travel, for tournaments and games in different countries. And Steve Nash would give the players spending money. He would take care of the players. There's all kinds of stories where he was just like an exceptional, really special teammate. And everybody in Canada loves and respects Steve big time.
Yeah. I mean, the last time Canadians were this excited about basketball was when he took the team in Sydney. No one's beat the team in this. Yeah. It was a good time.
Yeah, and I was a young university player. I remember watching those games, and that's where he became my hero for sure.
Yeah. We miss Steve. Apparently, he lives here in LA. I just never got. He does.
He does. He lives in. I think he's in
Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, Manhattan Beach. I was going to say Huntington Beach or Manhattan Beach. Yeah.
Manhattan Beach. Yeah. Well, Coach, thank you so much. Before we close, do you have any last words?
Well, I just miss everybody in Taiwan, and I want to say hi to my Taiwanese fans. And I'm excited about Taiwanese basketball this year. Now we have another new league now, and all kinds of teams changing and people moving around. So I'm excited to see kind of what happens in Taiwan.
Okay, one last hot take. So, is there a chance you'll come back to Taiwan for coaching?
There's always a chance. I really enjoyed my experience in Taiwan, and I thought that we built something special with the Dreamers. I think we definitely didn't have the power or control of Fubon or the Kings, but I thought that we really displayed. I thought that we built a strong culture. Now that I've been away from the game in Taiwan for 2 years or 2 seasons, I really think that we did something special there, and I was really proud of that. I thought we were a special team the way that we played, and I think if there's ever an organization that's looking to build a culture and build some toughness and togetherness, maybe there would be some synergy there with me in that organization. But at the moment, I'm happy in Canada. We just lost the championship here, so we're close to winning one, I think going back to Taiwan makes sense one day for sure if there's an opportunity.
Yeah, so let's hope you to come back to Taiwan, and I think like all Taiwanese fans want to see you too.
Okay, you.
So last thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you can't last thing 3 times, Colin.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
I do that in practice. Han, I do that every practice. I'll say, okay, one more drill. And the guys will say, you just said that was the last one. Yeah, I keep doing that. That's one of my coaching moves.
Colin is a coach in Hong Kong, so I guess he gets a bye.
There you go.
All right, Colin, you got 5 seconds. Here we go.
Okay, so any advice for people who want to enter the basketball industry, like no matter in Canada or in US or maybe in Asia?
Yeah, I think the number one advice, and I've hired a lot of guys who are trying to get into the industry, is you got to be willing those first couple years to do anything. You have to be willing to do anything, and you cannot put money first. I think in this business, if you put money first, you will struggle. So you have to create a scenario where you can provide value to a team, and your salary is not that. Now, eventually, your salary is super important. I think once you get your feet in the door with an organization. But yeah, you have to be. We hired 3 volunteer coaches this year with the Bandits, and I think we hired them for free as volunteer coaches. They were all amazing, and they will definitely now get an opportunity for a paid position with us because they came in and they were willing to do anything. They worked extremely hard, long hours, and they did it all for free. And I think that's really important. So I think if you want to get in the business, you have to find a way to provide value to an organization. So you can't just show up and say, I want to do anything. You have to be good at something. You have to have a passion for something, whether it be video, coaching, offense, defense, shooting, skill development, strength and conditioning, operations, ticket sales, marketing, whatever you want to do in an organization, you have to be good at it. And then you have to be willing to work basically as a volunteer to start. I think that's the best advice. And I think when you do that and you don't have the expectation of a paid position, great things can happen. I really believe that.
You got to work your way up.
You got to work your way up.
Thank you so much, Coach.
Hey, thank you guys. That was fun.
It's been incredible. I mean, I brought back so much memories. Canadian basketball, being on the island with Steve Nash, and the memories of you coaching Taiwan, picking out the critical things that has been missing in the elements. Because you could see the basketball population in Taiwan is huge. I mean, you go around and people are playing, like you said.
It's incredible.
It always baffles me why, with the number of players and fans involved, the basketball level isn't higher. But I think you point out some very, very important things.
Yeah, I think, but we should quickly just also mention we should also mention the positives. For sure, those are some of the things we can work on. But like you said, the business of basketball in Taiwan, the fan base is absolutely amazing. The amount of kids that are playing that you see is absolutely amazing. And there's so many good Taiwanese players. We just have to continue to produce more, right? Like there's some great players right now for sure. We just have to continue to produce more of them for sure.
And you have to do it the right way, just as you said.
Exactly.
And I think we know how it's very important. Well, thank you, Coach. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful 90 minutes. I'm sweating, but also buzzing all over the place. It's
awesome.
So much from you. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Best. Good luck to your next season. I know you just finished your season, but you deserve a holiday. Enjoy your time.
Well, I hope you guys. I hope we stay in touch. And if you ever want to come to a Bandits game, just send me a message, and we'll take care of you guys for sure. Food.
Absolutely,
So you just live down the street. Now you got to send me a message for next summer, man.
Got it. It was
if you ever come down to LA or Taiwan or Hong Kong, please let us know too.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right, guys.
With that, we'll talk to you next time.
Okay. Take care, guys. Good night. See you.
Good night. Bye.
各位小人物们，如果你喜欢小人物上篮，欢迎上 Facebook 或 Instagram 跟我们互动，也请上 Apple Podcast 给我们评语，给我们5颗星，也请帮忙分享给身边爱篮球的朋友们。如果你更进一步想要成为小人物上篮的一份子，欢迎加入小人物会员。你可以在嘖嘖网页搜寻小人物上篮，在那里可以选择成为小人物新秀、明星，甚至是 MVP。从2023年开始，我们有更新会员权利，会带来更搞纲的回馈、更及时的交流，还有节目中专属唱名感谢，以及来自我们的生日小惊喜。如果你在全世界其他的地方没有 access to Zack， 也可以上 Patreon 支持我们，让我们一起让小人物上篮继续成长。感恩啊！
小人物上篮。